Corrigan Martin, and I was born on December the 18th, 1913, which makes me 100 years old as of last December. And I'm Glenn's grandma. And I'm very pleased to be able to answer your questions. It'll be fun. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, by the way. So the first one from Maddie, what kind of things did you do in school?
Maddie, well, when we went to school, we all sat at individual desks, and underneath the top was a shelf to put our books. And on the top of the desk, on the right-hand corner, there was a little hole with a container in it, and it had ink in it. And when we wrote it on paper, we wrote with a pen with ink, with nibs in them, and you dipped the nibs in the ink and then wrote with the pens, as opposed to today's pens, which are automatic.
Well, and I don't usually even let my students use pens. They almost always have to use pencils. Fantastic. Now this next question, I'm sure you have lots of interesting things to say about it. Tobin is wondering, what was it like in World War II?
Well, in World War II, I was alone at home. My husband Art was overseas for 3 years, so I was home in a little 2-bedroom bungalow with 2 little children, one a year old when he left and the other 3 when he left. And so I had to sort of run the bungalow and run the financing and everything else while he was gone. I managed to get through that. But I had to go out and shovel snow, and in those days the houses had screen windows that you put on in the summer and storm windows that you put on in the winter. So the storm windows had to be cleaned and hung. And because it was a 1-story bungalow, I was able to do it myself.
Right.
And the furnace was fired by coal, so there was a little portion of the basement boarded off for a coal bin, and you carried the coal to the furnace.
Wow.
So that was sort of life in the war years.
So you had to keep the household going.
We had to keep the household going, and we had you got coupons for your food. Meat was rationed, and sugar was rationed, butter was rationed, and you got coupons for those. So when you went to the store, you had a coupon. That was as much as you got was what was listed on the coupon.
And the concept of rationing, of course, they won't know what it is, and that being, explain the idea of rationing to students who would never have heard of this.
Well, rationing is done by the government, where they ration each person, allow each person so much of food, of that particular food. And there was sugar and meat and butter were on the ration lists because they were scarce during the war, and to get so that everybody got a little bit. Each person was only allowed so much, so when you went to the store you were just allowed to buy so much, and you had to have a coupon for it.
Wow.
In order to get it.
That's definitely not the way it is now.
Liquor was also was rationed.
Oh. Huh. Thank you, that's excellent. Nils is wondering, what did the money look like?
Well, the money is basically the same as the money is today, except that we had shin plasters, which were 25, what were they now, 25-cent paper money.
25-cent paper money?
Shin plasters, and they were about 2 inches by 4 inches. Little bills. And I'm so long since I've had one, I've forgotten what the value was, but it seemed to me it was 25 cents.
And of course 25 cents bought a lot more then than it would now.
Oh well, yeah, well you can tell if you got a nickel to go into a show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really neat. Sebastian is wondering, what did you eat as a kid?
What did I eat?
Yeah.
Well, I ate just about everything. I was...
Give them some examples of food that you...
The only thing I didn't eat, well, basically the same as you eat today. And my mother had a thing for liver, that you had to have liver once a week, and I didn't like liver, and I took strong objections, but it made no difference. I still had to eat it. You had to eat everything on your plate or you didn't get your dessert. And the rules were very strict about this, and we had to stay at the table until everybody was finished, of course. And we ate a lot of milk puddings and steamed puddings and stews and boiling chickens, which they don't ever use much nowadays, which you boiled the fowl and you ate the meat and then had chicken soup with the rest of it.
I still do that, by the way.
Yeah, well, that's
Yeah.
still quite common.
Yeah.
We have fancy roasts we didn't have unless we had company.
Oh. Wow. How about foreign food? Would you ever have tried something like sushi or
No,
lasagna?
none of those. Scottish foods,
Hmm?
because my people were from Scotland, and we ate oatmeal that was ground up fine. Now there's a name for that, and I can't think of it.
Hmm.
Gruel.
Oh, yes.
Gruel. And
Sounds delicious.
that was just oatmeal ground up fine, and that was good for you. But a lot of milk puddings for desserts, and a lot of soups. And
Wow.
they cooked beef heart.
Yep.
That was it was stuffed and served. Not everybody liked that one. And the kidney and liver, we ate tripe, which
What's tripe again?
tripe is the stomachs of the sheep, isn't it?
I'm going to guess
It's
this is
white.
different than most of my students'
It's white.
eating habits.
Tripe and onions, and your dad and your grandpa and I loved tripe and onions, but the kids didn't appreciate it at all. They didn't like you kids didn't appreciate it. Too. Mother and dad didn't appreciate it.
I could imagine that.
But I was raised on, we had tripe. And
Well, excellent. Cassidy's wondering, what did your phones look like?
Well, the phones basically were on the wall, and they were big wooden boxes, and you took the receiver in your hand off the wall, and the speaker stayed on the wall. And you phoned Central and asked for your number. Central answered when you picked up the phone, and you asked for your number, and she rang it for you.
So there was a person at Central,
There was a person at Central, yes.
and you told her the number you wanted to call.
And she rang it through.
Wow. I actually never thought about that.
Your mom and Popsy, Art's mother and dad, had one of those phones in their hall when I met him.
Huh.
One of the big phones. And they were about 2 feet long with a box, sort of bottom half, and the speaker at the top half, and the earphones hanging on the side.
Wow. So this next question is from Mason, and Mason asks, what was the best part of your life as a young person, as a child?
As a child. Well, I guess the first 14 years I was an only child. It probably was the very best I ever got. I was really well taken care of and had everything I needed and was nicely dressed and well fed. I guess as a child that was probably the best years.
Okay. And so your younger brother came along when you were 14?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
By then I was a babysitter.
Yes, definitely. Excellent. Now this question is from Miguel, and Miguel wonders, what did cars look like when you were a kid?
Miguel, well, the cars were few and far between when I was really young, and they were very old-fashioned. I'm sure you've seen the old-fashioned cars around there. We never had a car. Our family never had a car in all my life at home.
Wow.
My dad got the use of a car once or twice, but he wasn't a very good driver. My mother didn't like driving with him. But
Sounds familiar.
I was always a willing person to go.
So you never had a car when you were growing up?
No.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I never had a car until 1950. So the first 10 years of our married life, we didn't have a car.
So you spent about the first 40 years of your life never having a car, almost 40 years. Yeah.
Traveling on buses and
Yeah.
by foot.
Yeah.
I did an awful lot of walking.
Yeah.
I walked a tremendous amount.
Huh. Now this is similar to another question, and I hadn't noticed that when I took the questions in, but perhaps you can add to an earlier question. It says, Bailey is wondering what was it like in school? So maybe add something different that we haven't heard about.
Well, in school, we like all schools, we had recess and we went out and we skipped, and in the school itself, it was just, because we all had to sit at our desks, you go in and you sit down and you're in the same seat till noon hour, and you're not allowed to get up and run around or anything. You just stay put, and if you have to go to the bathroom, you put your hand up, and it was down the basement in the school in the country. I guess it was in both schools, I can't remember now. But I liked spelling bees, and I liked home ec, which was, the one year was the cooking, and the next year was the sewing. That's where I got started sewing.
Wow. Excellent. Now, this question is from Caitlin, and Caitlin is wondering, what type of toys did you play with?
Caitlin, well, I played with dolls mostly as a little girl. And I had one special doll that my aunt had given me that was called an Eaton Beauty doll, because Eaton's, which was a big departmental store in those days, sold it exclusively, and it had movable jointed arms and legs, and had eyes that opened and had eyelashes, and dolls were the big thing. We skipped in the summer when the weather was good, and
So skipping ropes, dolls, anything else?
skipping ropes, dolls, and played games, played Parcheesi, and I've even forgotten the names of the games. We played checkers.
Okay, excellent. Hayden is wondering, was there any electronics, and if there were, what were there? What were they?
Well, I don't recall electronics per se. Everything we had to be either wound up or something like that. Murray had a train when he was a little boy, but myself, I didn't have anything. I didn't have any wind-up toys at all. I had mostly dolls and dishes for feeding them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But,
So no electronics.
no electronics.
Yeah, that is what I expected, but it's still interesting to think about.
Yeah, I don't know when the radio came in, but it was 1920, I can remember the radio. And I remember my dad singing over the radio on one occasion.
And so my great-grandfather, your father, sang on the radio.
Yeah.
Neat. And that just brings me to another question that they haven't really asked, but it's related to Hayden's question. When did you first have a television?
We didn't have a television until 1954, about 5 years after they came in. And I remember Art and I took Maureen and Glennis and Murray down to the States for a weekend, and we were all standing around a window with a TV in it. I still remember that. I thought
Wow.
that the other day. The TVs we didn't have for 5 years after they came in.
Wow. And of course, never while you were a child.
Oh no. Well, I mean, we didn't even have a radio when I was little, really little.
Yeah. Excellent. This is fantastic, by the way. Avery kind of has a two-part question. First, well, I'll read the whole question. It says, how did you shop and get stuff like food and water? And then she adds, what were the shops like?
Well, the shops were small. They were individual shops. They were like butcher shops and grocery shops. And we walked to them for the most. We walked to the stores to do the shopping. There weren't many big stores. Safeway is the first one I remember coming in. But I was quite grown up by that time that started. The other, I remember going to the butcher shop with my mother and the grocery shop. And
Yeah.
just walking and carrying them off in a bag. carried everything home because we have no cars.
Right, right. Huh. That's amazing. So this student forgot to write his or her name, but the question is, what was your best board game when you were little?
Well, it was called Tiddlywinks, and it was very hard to explain. It's little circles of celluloid that were colored different colors, and each one had a color, and you use a bigger celluloid circle to make it jump, and you jump them over the table and into a cup.
It sounds fun.
Yeah, that was fun.
And the next question is from Luke, and Luke wonders what were books like in school?
Look, well, the books were just about the same as they are nowadays. They were just like books, and we had books for everything. Of course, arithmetic. Well, arithmetic. Our questions were all in books, and reading and writing. We had to write with 20 minutes each day. Every day we had to practice writing.
Wow. Okay. The next question from Marcus. What were movies like when you were little?
Marcus, well, we used to go to the movie on a Saturday afternoon and watch westerns, I guess you'd call them. Can't remember the man's name now, Tom, and he had a horse, and we used to watch westerns. And we'd go to the, and it cost us a nickel, 5 cents, to go in and see the movie on a Saturday afternoon.
Oh, wow. Wow, okay, and just to be clear for the students, if they don't know what westerns mean, I would say cowboy movies.
Cowboy
so in
movies,
case they're not sure what that is.
Tom Mixon, I can't think of the horse's name now.
That's
Tom Mix
funny.
was the rider, but I can't remember the horse's name.
There you go, and 5 cents.
5 cents to get in.
Now Heather's wondering, did you have horses at that time? And if so, what were they used for?
Did we have which?
Horses. Horses.
Horses.
The animal.
Hey,
Did you have horses?
horses.
the big animal that you ride on.
All right. No, I didn't have horses. I lived in the country for part of my life, but we didn't have a horse. I had a duck and a turkey, baby duck and baby turkey at one point.
But no horses.
No horses.
If other people had horses, what would they have used them for?
Just for riding. Well, we got driven to school in the winter. When I lived outside of Winnipeg, we went to school in winter in a sleigh, a big sleigh, a big one that held 20 people.
So
And
basically your school bus was pulled by a horse.
that's right. And we had a pair of horses pulled the sleigh.
Wow. Wow. That's really interesting. Now, another student who forgot to write his or her name, although given it's one of my students, I'm afraid of what may have inspired this question. It says, in school, was the teacher bad to you?
No, never.
Oh, that's good.
Seriously, but I was a good girl.
Okay, how about the students who weren't good girls?
Well, they got slapped with a ruler or chastised or sent to the principal's office if they were really bad.
Wow. Wow.
There was very little of that. Most of it was they were pretty good kids.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Cade wonders, what were clothes like when you were little?
Clothes.
Yes.
Well, they're certainly different from nowadays. We wore socks and that in the summertime and around our ankles and higher up our legs in the fall, and we didn't have slacks, of course. We wore dresses all the time and coats to cover them, and the clothing was much different than it is nowadays. It was much more bulky,
Right.
one thing.
Huh. And just in case the kids don't know what slacks are, you mean pants?
Yeah.
Yes. But I'm just translating because I don't know if they'll know that word.
Slacks.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking 2 or 3 words today that nobody's ever heard of before, and I thought that was sort of interesting.
Yes.
Like we used to say gee whiz. Well, do you ever hear anybody say gee whiz anymore?
No. Language is it's almost like it's alive in that it changes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Josh wonders, what was your home like?
Well, I lived in several homes because I lived in apartment blocks to start with. On the fourth floor in a one-bedroom suite with my mother and dad when I was little. And then when I was 7, I moved to a house in the country. That's when I went to school with a 4-room school with 3 grades in each room.
Wow.
And it didn't have a furnace. It had a heater in the living room and cook stove in the kitchen. And there was an outhouse. I don't know what you call them nowadays.
Yeah. Outhouse, yeah.
Privies or whatever. In the backyard, so there was no plumbing and water was carried from the pump at the next street.
Was the heater a wood stove then?
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Wow. Big change nowadays, that's
Then
for
we
sure.
moved to the city, of course, and lived with the city, all the things that were in the city, the electric light and the water and everything else.
And did the school in the city have plumbing?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was all modern. Well, modern for those times,
Yeah.
which is different from modern now.
And so, of course, this was around, you're talking about the time around 1920, 1921?
1920. I was born 1913. So I started school in 1919.
Huh.
So it was in the early 1920s.
Right, right.
And then we lived in regular house. We lived with an aunt for a year, and then we had our own house in a different district. And I've lived in many homes.
I see.
18, I think I counted the other day.
Wow, wow. All right, so one of my questions comes from Jordan, who's a volunteer in my class, and she asks, what was your favorite era of music and artist and band at that time?
Well, actually, the group of men that used to sing were called the Happy Gang, and they sang at noon every day over the radio, and that was a group I really liked. And there were, because it was a radio and you had to just sit still and listen to it, you didn't really get any particular heroes in the music like we got Justin Bieber today, or it's not Justin, I got him mixed up with Trudeau.
Oh, no, Justin Bieber, you're right.
It is Justin Bieber, isn't it?
Yes.
I am right, okay. So we didn't have any sort of really stars like you have today where everybody goes all over the place to get there to see them. And that wasn't the way in those days at all.
Interesting.
And the music was, the music I had was confined to personal, my father's who sang with other friends at home on a Saturday night. They'd have a gathering, and the entertainment would be somebody standing up at the piano singing and the rest of us sitting around listening.
Wow.
And that was the entertainment on a Saturday night.
Interesting. So I have a question here from someone who forgot to write her name, but she's decorated with hearts, various colored hearts, so I'm going to guess it's a girl. And she says, which kid was your best friend when you were little? And describe her if you could.
Well, my best friend was a little girl named Mary who lived on the next street and who had been a twin, but the twin had died. And until I came along, I met her when I was about 8. And until I came along, she'd be a very lonely girl by herself. She had brothers and sisters, but she was very reclusive. But she and I got along just great, and we were friends until we were well into our teens. And then before that, she moved away, but I used to go and stay weekends at their place. And then I moved to a different district, and my friends changed, and we sort of didn't see much of each other after we were about 14 or 15. And then I got another girlfriend that I had until she died when she was 65. And she was her parents were from England, so I sort of went along with them quite a lot.
Neat. Excellent. All right. Kyle is wondering, what did you do on weekends?
Well, when I was by myself in those first 14 years, I basically had to entertain myself, so I used to draw for something to do, or and play with the dolls, and visit with my friend Mary. When I finally got her, up until I was 8, I didn't really have any friends. But when I got married, she and I used to play together. She had brothers and sisters, so we all played together. But there was nothing organized. I took piano lessons all my young years, from I was about 8 until I was 15.
Yep.
But I never was a pianist. I can read music and play the piano, but I don't play for company. I just do it for myself.
Right.
And then I never had a piano from I was married until I was almost retired, and I got a little keyboard.
I remember that, actually.
And I didn't like it because it wiggled around on the dining room table. So when I moved up to Nanaimo, I bought a digital piano and took lessons, piano lessons, and I was 90 years old and taking piano lessons. And I took piano lessons for 2 years. And then I moved into assisted living. I had to give up my piano because there wasn't room for it.
Right. Huh. Now that is all the questions that the kids have. And I would say, is there anything else you want to add that you think kids might find interesting?
Well, the days when I was really young, there was such a difference between, I can remember the end of the war. I remember the soldiers, like I was only 4 years old. In 1918, I was 5 years old.
You mean World War I?
When the First World War ended. I remembered the soldiers on the streets. We used to take taxis in the city at what were called jitneys. There's an old-fashioned word for you. And it filled with people going in all different directions, and they'd take you wherever you were going for 25 cents.
Wow.
But they dropped off people on coming and going on the way.
Interesting. So they were taxis, but they took whoever just happened to need a ride.
Yeah, if you needed a ride, you got a jitney. That came up during the war. And then during the war, Mother and I both had the flu that was at the end of the war, that worldwide flu that was at the end of the First World War. And I can remember us both lying in the bedroom, and the doctor coming to the house to see us.
And was it, I'm going to guess that having a flu back then was a far more serious thing than now, in a way.
Well, that was the epidemic flu, yes. It was really bad. A lot of thousands of people died, but all over the place. I mean, it was a general flu.